Hi, welcome to the Ask the Expert section. What's new in Microsoft Teams security and compliance? We have our speaker expert, John Gruszczuk. He's a project manager for Microsoft Teams. He helps manage anything security and compliance or privacy related. Prior to this role, John helped lead Office 365 readiness with documentation and training. He also spent some time in the Microsoft consulting, working with enterprise customers, doing global deployments of Office, Windows, and even some Azure migrations. John, we're really excited to have you here. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. And hello to everyone, whether it is morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining us from. We will be covering the Ask the Expert session for what's new in Teams security and compliance. So I have a couple folks with me as my co-experts, and we're going to spend the next 25 minutes or so answering questions on kind of the most common related items. And I'll go ahead and just flash a quick code of conduct, and then we'll dive into a couple ground rules, and then we'll let the questions start coming. And just in case it's a little slow, I'll go ahead and ask our experts maybe a couple softballs, and then we'll get started. But first, let me go ahead and just show a quick code of conduct here. I am going to leave this up for enough time for everyone to be able to read. But again, I'll kind of in a quick summary, mission to empower. We do expect all digital event participants to hold a principal code of conduct, which if you watch the session today, we did talk about some communication compliance and how to actually monitor for things like this, which is pretty cool. But just a final reminder at the bottom there, photography, video, recording of the session content or presentations in any format shared in social channels is prohibited. We encourage everyone to assist in creating a welcoming and safe environment. Please report any concerns, harassing behavior, suspicious or disruptive activity to Business Conduct Hotline, and we have the number and email address there. So again, we look forward to a very inclusive, healthy, fun, and exciting session here. But a reminder, please, please, please adhere to this code of conduct. So just a quick intro before we turn it over and start asking some questions. Again, my name is John Gruszczuk. I work on Microsoft Teams, security, compliance, and privacy. So anything that kind of falls within that feature set within Teams is my topic area. And I will just say a lot of the conversation I hope to be having today is we'll talk about some of the security and compliance features you may already be leveraging in your organization that you're looking to deploy or leverage in Teams, or vice versa. You may be just rolling out Teams and you're looking for a good level set or baseline on how to get some of those basic policies enabled. So I will go ahead and pull up my chat here, and I think we can go ahead and get some basic questions going. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. David, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you, put you kind of on the hot spot here. So anything kind of team security compliance related or across, I'd say the Microsoft 365 spectrum, any kind of basic best practices you'd love to share on either baseline implementations or some kind of governance tips and tricks. Would love to kind of hear your first baseline strategy.
Oh wow, that's a great question. I mean, in my job, I work for the DoD. I'm a DoD contractor, so we are, as you might imagine, very security conscious. And so we look, we have a set of we call STIGs that are technical guidance of what things have to, what different applications have to meet certain standards. Luckily, with Teams, and it meets a lot of those out of the box. So as far as configuring it further, we take a look at, depending on what a certain team needs, we might, use some of the new features to apply some policies to, allow certain things and not allow other things. But it really depends. We're so wide. We have so many different customers. We have to look at each kind of situation in a unique way and say, all right, what does this one need? But we're really excited about some of these new features that we're going to be able to take advantage of, like the labeling. So that's where we start, and then from what our customer needs are, we move on from there.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And we do have a couple questions starting to come in, and we have a question from Michael F., who, funnily enough, got to experience me in Microsoft Consulting Services, so it's good to always see Michael coming back and leveraging Teams. His question is talking about some of the options or new features around compliance and retention policy options for private channels. I will take this one because it's a very hot topic. David, I'll let you share anything as far as what you may be doing to try and do some compliance around this. But for everyone asking, we have not announced anything publicly around a retention policy for private channels quite yet. We do have some documentation on docs.microsoft.com that we talk about retention policies as far as in public chat. It is something we are still working on. I don't believe we've even put anything in development on the public roadmap yet. It is something we've gotten quite a bit of asked today. It was actually the most common question in the session today. So as far as a very direct answer, I could say nothing publicly to share yet as far as the commit date. But David, I would love to hear from you, being a DoD contractor, if you are leveraging any sort of private channels in any of your space, what are some tips and tricks on just trying to make sure that you remain compliant without full-on retention policies?
Wow, yeah, again, so, yeah, we definitely have taken advantage of the private channels. Obviously, there's situations where we want certain teams to have that level of security. As far as tips and tricks, it's really, I guess the biggest thing for us is user education. So that when they are in a private channel, they know how that's supposed to be used, and when they're in a different kind of channel, they know how that's supposed to be used. So that's been our biggest challenge, is making sure that folks are aware of, what kind of channel they're in and how it's used, and they're not looking for things and not being able to find it. So there's a lot of integration with SharePoint Online, and sometimes they're popping out and they're looking for documents, and they're saying if they're in a private channel, it's different than if they're in a regular channel. So training, that's really my thing, is training is number one.
Yeah, I would definitely agree and echo that, as far as I mentioned that quite a bit in my session. And Michael in the chat, I'm sure I'll be getting a follow-up from you on when we can expect to see that on the public, or at least in the in-development roadmap. Another good question we got here was just would appreciate a brief rundown of the tools available to monitor and ensure individual chats in our company adhere to a code of conduct. We just started using Teams in the last 6 months. So I can give you a very specific answer there as far as the solution that we offer that can directly help with that, and that's Microsoft Communication Compliance. I will give a very honest answer in saying that it is part of our E5 SKU, so it is higher than your basic E3 SKU. But what Communication Compliance is going to be able to allow you, your IT or your SecOps team, essentially any stakeholders that you give these 4 or 5 admin roles within Communication Compliance, is you can go ahead and create policies similar to data loss prevention or DLP policies, and actually monitor for chats for things like threatening or harassing behavior. You can actually even monitor for sensitive data leaks like DLP. But what it's going to do is it's actually going to trigger those insights in your Communication Compliance Reporting Center. So you're actually able to start to identify, patterns of behavior of the employees, whether it's, again, threatening or non-inclusive behavior, or whether it's common sensitive data leaks that aren't necessarily needed to be blocked by a DLP policy, but you still need to get that active reporting and insights on. So Communication Compliance is really that piece of it. It's something that we've seen in the education space start to really take off and be leveraged, because again, when we've seen classrooms go virtual, we want to make sure that those chats remain a very safe, inclusive space, but we need to be able to monitor as well. So whereas things like DLP policies actually being enforced are going to block messages regarding sensitive data, things like personal identification numbers, passport, etc. Communication Compliance is that solution set that's going to be able to monitor your team's chats to be able to identify, again, those same type of non-inclusive behaviors. My experts, I'd ask if there's anything you'd like to add to that, but I think this one was a pretty upfront one for Communication Compliance.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the other experts have anything to add, but I think you covered it pretty well.
All right. So just monitoring the questions here. I got a good one. Just I see David, you're echoing as far as the anonymous question went. As undergraduate student, most of my professors are not familiar with Teams. Frowny face. We definitely want to get that out there. What does Teams provide that would benefit classes from a professor's perspective? So this is a great question as far as it covers the EDU space, and not just that, but we've seen things like virtual conferencing become more and more of the norm inside of enterprises and small businesses as well. And so this is a great question to kind of cover all of those areas. And so I'll take a quick stab at it, and then David, I'll go ahead and let you kind of chime in as well. So the first thing I'd say is some very easy announcements that we had were things like breakout rooms. So being able to have designated inclusive areas that you can go and have content and chat and collaboration centralized and have a clear division. As far as I'll take a stab at some of the newest features we just announced that are as far as just meeting organization goes. So the ability to not only hard mute all the attendees on things like I'll just quickly rewind and say we're in a live event right here. And so we have the controls as the moderators right here, but we can actually have, we could have done this as an open team meeting. And what we could have done instead is have a hard mute. So actually all the attendees would not be able to unmute unless myself or David were actually manually unmute them. And so it gives you that kind of one-to-many lecturer control. So again, we talk about that in the education space, but also in the forms of internal town halls that we do at Microsoft. We've done live events. If it's a little bit of a smaller scale, we're actually going to go ahead and just do it as a normal Teams invite, but everyone will join with that hard mute. We have the ability to raise hands. So again, not just in large meetings, but we talk about in a classroom space, you want to be able to raise your hand and have that inclusive gesture, let everyone know that there is a hand raised. We have multiple areas that it pops up. And then as far as meeting controls, being able to allow, specify certain students or certain attendees being able to share out their screen. So again, we have those safety defaults when you join the meeting to lock it down and say that, only myself, David, Adrian can present out. We're the only ones that can come off mute. And then we can allow other attendees perhaps or other students to share out. And I'd say just the last thing is the new feature that we actually announced was being able to actually end a meeting. So one of the things is a normal Teams meeting, once that meeting ends and I actually hit leave, that meeting still goes on for anyone that's there. That could be a problem not only in the education space, but it could be a very large problem in business meeting space where we might have external participants. So we now have introduced the ability to actually go up there and hit end meeting, and it will actually end that meeting and then prevent, in this case, students from being able to rejoin. That was a mouthful, and I know, David, you mentioned integrated tool set, so if there's anything you'd like to add there, absolutely go for it.
Yeah, this one hits home because I am an adjunct professor for the University of Maryland, and I've been using Teams, especially now with the pandemic and everything has gone online, totally online. And the challenge is that a lot of the universities, a lot of academia, use a host of other tools. They are not as familiar with the Microsoft tool set as you would hope. So some of all these competitor tools, while they might do one thing really well, they're not integrated. So what I'm showing, and I also, not only do I teach my students how we use Teams so we can actually conduct our classes, but I'm actually showing other instructors, hey, if you use Teams, you can, inside of Teams, open up a document and do co-authoring. You don't have to go and switch to another tool. You don't have to, juggle 3 or 4 tools during one class. You want to record your lecture, and you want to put it up on stream and then make it available to the students. You can do that all in the same tool set. And a couple of really nice features of Teams is the ability. I had a deaf student recently, and I had a blind student, and Teams allowed me to capture the transcript and make that available so that the deaf student could go and read what I was saying. So it's got a ton of features, and then as John mentioned, the new features, the hard mute, which really helps when people were jumping in, students that didn't even know they were off of mute. You can hard mute them and they stay muted until you that's going to be great. And again, the challenge, I know I said this earlier, but I'll say it again, is educating folks on what Teams is all about. It's not just chat, it's not just meetings, it's an integrated tool set that can replace so many of these other kind of not integrated tools. So it's the challenge is getting out there and doing that adoption. And at the same time, going back to what this session is about, letting them know it is secure. I mean, in fact, that was that I hate to say it, but one of the big benefits was that one of the competitor tools had a security problem. There was some bombing going on where people were joining meetings and that weren't invited. And Teams, because it is got security baked in and privacy is number one. That was one of the things that I've been able to use to leverage and say, hey, look, you had problems with your other tool set. Try Teams. It's secure out of the box. And I've had a lot of success with other professors and saying, yeah, you're right. We really need to be taking a look at this and using it more.
Thank you, David. That's actually a great segue into a couple questions I'm going to kind of rattle off here. Two will be some quick answers. We have an anonymous question. Are we in a process to release a meeting lock feature, which has to go with some of the idea of the anonymous meetings, so that we can lock the meeting once we have the desired participants? We have nothing to publicly share on the idea of locked meetings. Something we are working on is this mindset, though, or this idea of being able to essentially only allow very restricted attendees in. So I can't share that we have anything public yet. I'd say there's definitely some things on the horizon to look forward to towards the end of this calendar year. I won't say necessarily it will be a meeting participant lock, because the idea of that could also be that if someone drops off and they may have to dial in through a cell number, we still want to allow that person in. But per this question, we are absolutely looking at the idea of completely locking meetings down to actually have only the expected participants in there. It's something that's a little bit challenging, but the question is spot on something that we are looking to solve for. And again, I'd say be on the lookout in the next couple months here. The next one I'll hit real quick is Tracy asked, as far as the M365 SKU required for security and compliance settings. Mentioned a lot of the staff are using the M365 business SKUs. I will mention a lot of the items that I did talk about in my session are E5 when we start talking about data loss prevention, communication compliance, information barriers, are E5, but there are certainly some baseline things we could take advantage of, like multi-factor authentication. I think is the number one thing that I've been talking about for 5 years. It doesn't matter what product I've been working on. Basic MFA, basic security settings as far as Teams meeting policies. I'll echo again what David mentioned as far as training end users on how to stay vigilant on not sharing information, but also being inclusive in meetings. And then as far as not sharing corporate data, if you have things like classification labels rolled out, taking advantage of, again, teaching them how to properly classify information. As far as guests go and external participants, again, if you're not leveraging E5 security, or even if you are, a lot of these things require end user education and actually being proactive, having either wiki sites or FAQ sites that your end users can get training from. It could be a bi-weekly or monthly email on Fridays that cover a couple topics. So again, I'll mention a lot of these things are E5 as far as the advanced capabilities that are leveraging things like automation and the graph intelligence. But there are a great set of baseline features within the E3 SKUs that you could take advantage of. And there's also a lot of great things that are simply time and effort, and that's end user training. And I know, David, you mentioned that early on, so I'll let you mention if there's anything E3 that really comes to mind, not to put you on your licensing sales hat here, but if there's anything E3 that you can think of, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that might be just coming into Teams, otherwise just baseline security features as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've juggled. We have a couple of different. Our certain customers have E5, some have E3. We have a few people that are using, I think it's F1 for just the light usage. Just I guess they're just participants. You mentioned something about the weekly meetings and the training and adoption. One thing that we do that helps with, again, just kind of enforcing how things are supposed to be used and keeping security top of mind is we have a champions program where we have, I work with like 20 or so, we call ourselves customer service reps, but we're sort of that champion to our customers, and each of our customers could be anywhere between 1,000 or 5,000 people in an organization, a government organization. So then we turn around and we find 10 or 20 people among those 1,000 folks that are passionate about technology, passionate about working with teams, and we kind of copied the idea from Microsoft. And Microsoft has several champion programs, but these are people that are passionate about the technology, and we get together with them, and then they take and they disseminate the lessons learned that we come up with to the rest of the workforce, and that has been really powerful. We motivate them with badges, and they get a silver badge for participation or a gold badge if they've answered so many questions. The champion program has really been really helpful for us in rolling out the training and adoption of teams.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, David. And also Adrian did mention a couple items in there as well as far as some E3. So I think we covered that one from 3 angles. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple other questions here. I know I saw something I was coming right back to. Charles mentioned, how does team security compliance roll up to the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center? And so this is a great one to easily say everything realistically comes from the M365 Security and Compliance Center. As far as the easier way to think of it, and I don't know, I might be kind of picking at my job here, but the easier way to think of it is we are simply integrating these security and compliance features and lighting them up within the team service. And the way that Microsoft has designed security and compliance is that we don't want you to think about enabling these things in each individual service. We want you to be able to easily switch them on if you are leveraging that service, right? The idea, and a couple demos I've done in various sessions, is I go back into an already created data loss prevention policy that I'm using throughout Exchange and SharePoint, and I just rolled out Teams. I've actually rolled it out just to my engineering group only. Now we're ready to start applying DLP to that engineering group, and then we go through that gradual rollout. As I start to add more and more groups to Teams, I start to apply more of those DLP policies. It's really that simple that I just go into my M365 Compliance Center, go within data loss prevention, and just simply flip that switch that starts monitoring Teams chat and channels. It's the same things with communication compliance. It's just a checkbox. So everything really is set at that top level, and we start to integrate that in. It's things like multi-factor authentication with conditional access, being able to create a policy so that if David catches me trying to access from a Tor anonymous browser, he's going to say at minimum, I want to make sure that, through a conditional access if then challenge, that I'm going to push an MFA request down. Or truthfully, if it's an anonymous Tor browser, he might want to actually block my access and say, hey, you can reach out to your administrator, but otherwise we're not going to allow you in. So that's coming from the Endpoint Management Center, and then we get into things like app protection policies. And one of my favorite things I talk about is, again, thinking of that terms as not managing each individual application. One of the first things I used to do with customers is we'd create an app protection policy that covers SharePoint, Outlook, OneDrive, and Teams on the device, because we went through a couple scenarios where they said, well, realistically, we're going to have all the same security requirements for that device and that end user for all 4 of those apps. They're all social collaboration apps for us. Yammer is another one. They're all collaboration apps that have documents, that have data, that has corporate belongings to it. So we're going to have the same baseline security settings. And we said, great, you don't have to create 4 separate granular policies for it. You're able to create one app protection policy that we just call a lot of times the Microsoft collaboration apps or whatever for iOS, Android. So again, you can start to kind of, I think the age-old saying is work smarter, not harder. Start to bundle those things together that have similar governance policies, and then when you do need to create those kind of depth level policies, you're able to. But I'd say it all really levels up to your M365 security and compliance. We like to say, again, don't reinvent the wheel if you're governing SharePoint in very specific ways. Teams is built on top of SharePoint, so you're going to probably want to govern it in those similar ways, whether it's for compliance or regulatory standards or just internal regulatory or best practices. So David, I'll let you kind of add anything to that as far as just kind of management at the M365 layer, especially with your experience kind of leveling or managing all the way back to the Office 365 workloads.
The only thing I'll say is that it has, sort of the one-stop shop for the admin center is made things a lot easier for a lot of our admins. Like you say, you go to one place, you've got the Teams admin center, you've got the other, and it really helps with, when you onboard someone and walk them through what we need to do. It's not very, I don't want to say it's not very complicated, but it definitely has an ease of use that makes it much more user friendly and not a big learning curve.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, just trying to read some questions in here as well. Good question here that I actually don't know the 100% answer to, so I'll go ahead and share it from Jason. Is there any way for an administrator to see who asked an anonymous question in a live event? The use case is if someone asks a concerning question regarding threat, safety, etc. Jason, that is the first question that has fully stumped me. I don't believe there is, but as far as making sure that I give the truthful answers, I'm not 100% sure on that. So I will actually take that one offline, unless David, you can commit it either way.
Well, it's funny. That's always a tricky. That's not to segue too much, but in the DoD, we get tasked a lot with having, we need an anonymous survey, and then shortly after we do it, they say, "Hey, tell us who did it." And we're like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
You asked us to make it anonymous. That's the point. So I guess the question is, and I don't know the answer to this either, but is there a way to block anonymous folks from joining a live event?
We do have I got to be careful here, and I don't share anything that's not publicly available. So I could share that we have, at the very least, talked about the idea of restricting complete anonymous attendees from Teams live events. If it's not in the admin center right now, I think I may have given an Easter egg for anyone that is listening to the session. I can certainly share that, yes, we're always thinking about anonymous attendees. David, you mentioned back to the idea of bombing calls. It's things that have happened in any video conferencing service. We can be open and upfront about it. It's something that all of us across the video conferencing services have actually had to come together on. We faced public challenges on this exact question. There have been open letters to all of the company leaders essentially saying, hey, there needs to be better safety in here, whether it's in the education space or just the enterprise space, that it's not just about safety of what's being discussed in that meeting, but again, it goes back to inclusive behaviors, making people feel welcome and inclusive and belonging in their workplace. And so there is a lot of work I could share on the back end that is being done around how do we prevent anonymous users from being in there when we have external events. How do we enable, again, full open collaboration, but make sure that we can really lock these down. But again, one of the things I do have to go back to is Microsoft does believe privacy is a fundamental human right. So when we do things that are essentially being deemed as anonymous, we are going to follow up on that and essentially say that that user is having their privacy respected. We're not tracking cookies on who that person is or trying to identify who that user is. And David, you used that good example. This does happen in the enterprise space, where essentially we allow kind of anonymity, and then we want to figure out who that end user is. And essentially we have made the promise, and the service works, if that is an anonymous user, we are going to protect that user. So it was a long way of saying we can't right now, but we are working on ways to essentially, within live events, essentially, and I think this is out. If it's not, it's coming. Block anonymous users from being able to, or at the very least, we can restrict it to internal attendees only. And with those external enforcements, we'll start to be able to limit out being able to restrict anonymous attendees. It always comes into play a little bit too on how we can have them authenticate in to essentially validate that it is a valid user and not someone that's essentially spinning up accounts to try and spam. Not just an enterprise meeting, but we think about education space. We want to make sure that we're not having anyone be interrupted. So that's why hard mute came out very early on, is to protect that. So again, we're trying to get in there and start to really kind of drill down on blocking anonymous users. We do have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to scan for a couple last questions here. Changes are coming around 911 support and compliance for Teams voice deployments. Charles, I'll have to get back to you on that one. There's a long question here from Mike. Mike, I will have to follow up with that one in chat. But with 2 minutes. Thank you, Michael. Mentioned not a question, but we should take a moment to acknowledge just how rapidly Teams is delivering new features in so many different areas. I can pivot on that and say thank you for the kudos, but I think we can challenge ourselves, excuse me, and say that we have a lot more to deliver. I think there's a lot of very, very good things that some of our competitors have set the bar at, as far as some of the inclusive meeting features, like raising your hand, like having a hard mute. And I think there's areas that Microsoft has clearly set the bar and really pushing other industry solutions. And I think a big part of that is integration within security products, right? I'm not saying that you always have to be in one single stack, but as we start to have different integrations using, let's say, a third-party MFA, third-party DLP, we want to know and that those solutions are meeting industry regulations, industry compliance standards. We want to make sure you as a customer know that wherever your data goes between those third-party services, you're meeting your compliance and regulation features, or excuse me, requirements. So I will say that, again, Michael, thank you for the kudos, but I also think that we do have a lot of challenges ahead of us too, because this is something that the virtual conferencing space is clearly not going away. And I think that all of us in this area have really a duty to kind of push each other to have this kind of safe, inclusive video conferencing service that has security features in the back end. When we talk about compliance, we make sure that we are protecting users' privacy rights, that we're also helping organizations complete those compliance and regulatory standards, and not just from a business perspective, but a lot of people in this have talked about, again, that safe space, having that inclusive behaviors, if there's threatening language, if there's a safety violation, being able to quickly address that situation, if not actually block it altogether from happening, as soon as we had that intelligence recognize that situation. So I will say that is what I think you're going to see on the next 6 months of Teams. Of course, we're going to have a lot of those awesome features like live galleries, video conferencing. When we started to have the all together modes, it's not just in some of the sporting events we've seen it start to become pretty popular in the idea of concerts, which I think will be awesome, because I can't always travel to see some of my favorite artists, and I'd love to be able to virtually attend. So I think that's going to be really cool. But I think this next 6 months across all video conferencing space, there's really a push and need to have these baseline security features that really get integrated in, and that's not just as far as data protection goes or helping out the organization. A lot of it is helping folks, be inclusive, be included in the meetings, get their voices heard, and then also make sure that it is an inclusive meeting, it is inclusive chat, and that we can prevent things like that from happening, not just block it after it occurs, but actually prevent these things from happening. So we are a minute over. David, I'll let you kind of say a quick goodbye. I want to say thank you very much for sharing all of your knowledge and expertise with us. So I'll say that. I'm signing off as John G. I have another one of these at 4:15 a.m. Pacific time, evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it is. We look forward to hearing you. And David, go ahead and give your sign off for us.
Thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you all. I'm going to hang out and reply to a couple more questions here in the chat here. And thanks for joining us. Everyone have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. And thanks again. Bye.